That right.
Hello, welcome to Unscripted Strength. I don't know what episode we're on, maybe 20 now?
21? This
21?
will be 21, yeah.
Yeah, thanks for tuning in and watching. As always, we're gonna go over our training. Also, if you're just watching, I'm Ethan and that's Day. Hi, Day.
What's up, guys?
Yeah, so Day's gonna go over her training first because mine's gonna be a big letdown for Day when she hears what I did over the last 2 weeks. So it's gonna be great, especially because we have a High Rocks in 2 weeks.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, my training's been pretty standard. Like, I'm not changing anything up probably for the next 4 weeks or so. It's just like, hey, try to beat what you did the previous week, and if you feel like crap, then adjust volume. So when it comes to those things, if I feel like crap, the first thing I'm adjusting is volume. Like, instead of doing 4 sets of 6, maybe I'll do 2 sets of 6, and I keep the same intensity and load. So if, let's say, I'm dumbbell benching with 50-pound dumbbells and I'm doing, prescribed 4 sets of 10 normally, and let's say I feel tired one week, then I would bring it down to like 2 sets of 10, but I'll keep the same weight. And then let's say I really can't do it, then it's like, okay, I will, either bring down the reps a little bit or I'll change up the weight. So intensity is the last thing I change. But right now, everything feels pretty good, pretty standard. So I'm just chugging along. I'm just kind of hopping in what Marley's doing with her running because I think
Mm-hmm.
she's planning on doing like a half marathon in like 2 to 3 weeks,
Shit.
and kind of did like a little expedited training plan of like 6 weeks of training. It's like six-ish weeks. So she's gonna do that, and I'm just kind of like hopping in on her runs. Like on Monday, she went on a easy 5 mile run, and I was just like, "Oh hey, are you running today? I'll just join you." And I just like jumped in. Yesterday we did 10 miles easy. And it's just fun, you know how it is, like, when you're working out with someone, it's just more enjoyable.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm just kinda hopping in because I don't have, like, any besides, like, high rocks, I don't have any, like, races or anything coming up, so I'm just treating at least my endurance training, how I feel based on what I can do now that, like, my schedule is changing up too with like school and work just because the semester started. So I'm like, hey, let me just do what I can, what I, am able to handle. And then eventually I'll have some goal later on and I'll adjust my training to that goal. But right now it's just like, hey, just have fun with it, get in some running.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. I mean, that's what consistency should feel like for anybody. You're just doing it. You're just doing the thing. Yeah, my Day, you're gonna love this. So 2 weeks ago, I did a workout, felt like dog shit, and then took 2 days. I was like, I'm just gonna fucking rest. Every time I tried to work out, I would just get like cold sweats and feel terrible. Everything felt weak. So I worked out twice 2 weeks ago. That was it. I did like one high rocks workout, maybe two like small strength days. And then I get to like Sunday and I'm also, stressed about normal life shit. I got a bunch of shit going on. I'm trying to keep my life fucking organized, which is, sucks. And so I get to like Sunday, Monday, and I start getting my mouth. So I get stress ulcers really bad in my mouth, and I think I've just been not sleeping enough, doing too much, too stressed. So I've not done any cardio in a week and a half, which, you know, not the greatest, also not terrible. It's not like I'm maladapting my cardio in 9 days, right? There's no way. Borderline?
Borderline.
Whatever. I'll be fine. I can suffer for 90 minutes in a high rocks. So anyway, the reason I'm not running is because I have two like penny-sized ulcers on the back of my throat that
Oh,
are every time I breathe, I can it. I mean, like horrible pain for the last like 6 days. I'm just like
any size is kind of big.
they're huge. They
Yeah.
fucking hurt really bad. Yeah, but no other symptoms. I got a strep test, and my doctor just thinks they're stress ulcers that just so happen to be on both sides of my uvula.
Perfect.
Yeah, so every time I breathe in through my nose or my mouth, it just dries them out, and then it feels like I'm swallowing a bucket of nails. So the thought of doing
Dang.
cardio with that, I tried
Yeah.
once, horrifying. Because you're
Yeah.
breathing and then your mouth gets dry, and now you're running, and it just feels like I've got the bad side of sandpaper constantly on the back of my throat, and then every swallow is like,
Yeah, that does not sound fun. I've never had something like that.
dude,
Yeah,
mouth stress ulcers have been my life's plague. I
really
get the oh my god. Yeah. So often, I don't know why.
interesting. I don't get mouth ulcers, but have like stress-induced like rashes on my scalp. So
Mm,
it'll come up like here and on the back of my head. So
mhm,
like, it's oh, and on my eyebrows too, like I'll get them here. So
mhm.
that happens when I'm stressed, but it doesn't inhibit me from working out.
Yeah. So these, like, right now I woke up today and they feel way better. Way, 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 way better.
Okay.
But, like, yesterday when we were doing the in-service that you were teaching, dude, I was, like, the whole day. So I
Just
mean,
sitting there?
oh, yeah, the last 5 days have been horrible.
Is there
Horrible.
anything you can take to help with that? Like cough drops,
And
anything or
yeah, I mean, the cough drops help, but you can only take those every 2 hours, and then they'll start giving you the shits, so
dude, that's happened to me.
yeah, so, but yeah, I'm just, like, throwing Advil in my mouth and trying to eat and stay hydrated even though every time I swallow, it makes me wanna cut my toes off, so it's
Uh,
pretty cool. So my training has sucked. So I took a deload, a long deload, exactly when I didn't need to,
yeah,
so that sucked, but whatever,
that's fine.
I'll be fine. There's no
You'll be
way I'm
fine.
I'm losing cardio in 9 days, right? There's no way.
I think you'll be fine. You'll be fine. I mean, here's the thing, like, we're gonna go there to the race, it's gonna be all vibes, just it's gonna be a good time. But usually, cardio does get lost kinda quickly.
Really? Oh god, there's a sticky note
Yeah,
on this.
if, like, you completely just, like, cold turkey lose
Well,
it.
I've worked out.
Yeah,
I worked out
yeah.
twice last week, did some lifts, so it's not like I'm not doing anything, but yeah, I definitely, But so my plan is to cut the lifting to like as of either to tomorrow my throat should be pretty much better. There's still huge sores in my throat, but they go from like really swollen to they start to like shrink and then they feel better and then they're gone. So my plan is, and this is a great question for you, coach. My plan is to cut my strength stuff pretty much down to nothing and then just focus on cardio until we race to try to get
Mhm.
that. Because then if I pull my strength stuff back, I can put a lot more effort into cardio for the next 2 weeks and hopefully make some kind of progress until race day. What do you think about that? What are your thoughts?
I mean,
It's a
I
last
think
ditch effort. It's obviously not ideal, but
yeah, right, like, last ditch, but I don't see anything wrong with it because it's not like your strength gains are gonna be lost significantly. If you do have any strength loss, like, for you, you're already so significantly strong, right? Where, like, the sleds are easy for you. Like, that's not a limiting factor for you, and we know that. Like, the sleds are all the movements are easy. They're really light for you. Like, the farmer's carries are a joke for you. The lunges, joke. Sled push, sled pull, joke
mhm,
for you. But we know what the limiting factor is gonna be, like, the running and cardio. So it's, hey, like, if you get some volume in with that, but enough where you're gonna kind of feel good and confident going into
mhm,
the race and probably get some small adaptations, but not enough where you're gonna like overwork yourself and potentially put yourself with either too fatigued or injury prone or anything like that. So I think it'll be good, especially if you mix up the type of cardio that you're doing, you know, mix it up so it's not just like a repeated stressor on your joints if you're doing just running, right? Maybe
yeah.
rowing, biking, running, blah blah blah, and just put more time into that. Stairmaster, bro, we need a Stairmaster, yeah.
Well, I still have an LA Fitness membership until the 31st, so maybe
Okay.
okay, so this is a good question, and I think kind of goes along with what you did. We just posted a video. If you guys are interested, go to our YouTube. It's an 18-minute video. It's 8 minutes or 5 minutes of her programming for an avatar, which happens to be a middle-aged mom looking for a few days a week
Yeah,
of
yeah, middle age,
fitness.
if you count 30 years old as middle age, which will
We're
make me feel
middle-aged. We're
old,
old.
but yes.
Okay, but so Day, if given my situation, I'm the avatar, what would be your course of action for the next 2 weeks until our High Rocks? What should I do?
I would probably do 3 because we got, what, 11 days to go. If you do let's look at it through week chunks, even though it'll be, like, 1.5 weeks, but I would go in a week span, probably 3 to 4 cardio days and 2 of them being, like, running,
Mhm.
so, like, 2 times running, and then 1 to 2 times, like, a circuit high rock style cross training. So, with that, the running one, I would probably put both of them as easy runs,
Mhm.
just, like, easy aerobic, getting time there, 30, 60-minute type runs, nothing crazy. The cross training is where I would make things a little bit more add in some intensity there, and you could do it as, like, a circuit training with, like, high rocks, events in there, so
Mhm.
mix it up with, like, lunges, rowing, bike, even though there's no bike in the high rocks, but bike, wall balls, just or sled pushes and all that, and you're going there, and you're gonna go kind of more of a tempo pace. So
Mhm.
again, that's like the RPE 8-ish realm where you're not going max effort. It's like hard but doable. And if you need to add, and you can have those as like repeated stations, or you could have like work to rest ratios and work it in that way. So I would do that. And then if you have you said you have access to LA Fitness, so let's say you have the time to go there, which I know is kind of like out of the way and all that, but I would add in some like cross training of like Stairmaster or some other, cardio modality. I just
Is
like
that outside
Stairmaster.
outside the 2 and 2, the 2 runs, 2 circuits, add in some
No, I would put
stairmasters?
that so the 2 runs, and then I would say 1 to 2 cross training. In the
One of
cross
them could
training, one of
be
them would be
the
like High
stairmaster.
Rock style, and one would be
The stairmaster.
Stairmaster. Yeah. Yeah.
Dude, stand on it. Stairmaster's your favorite.
Dude, it's so good, yeah.
We're gonna get a branded stairmaster for you.
That would be sick.
Mhm. With your face
Honestly,
on it like this, just mugging.
yeah, yeah, that'd be cool.
Okay, I mean, that's perfect. That was my plan, similar. Just I was like, "I'm just gonna run 10 miles every day." I text you the day before, I'm like, "My feet are broken."
Yeah, yeah, I know.
That is
Something
some
will
dumb
come
shit
up.
I would do. But I think that's a good, I think I'm a good, you know, like, for anyone who's trying to compete in something, was I upset when I got sick or, this shit popped up? Yes, but, it's like you can only do what you can only prepare your best, and sometimes your immune system or your life stresses catch up to you, and, it just is what it is? I'm not pulling out of the fucking high rocks, it's gonna be fun. I will be a little bit less conditioned than I want to. I think if I hadn't gotten sick, I could have gotten, like a week and a half, 2 weeks of some significantly reduced exercise sucks, but I just want, don't trip so much about it. And I think sometimes, oh, what's his name? Dylan, his Instagram is Dozer Weightlifting, but he was doing a podcast. I think he was on Coach 'Em Up that I really liked. That was like, you have some people who do Olympic weightlifting or compete or practice, and they quit the sport eventually and they never compete because they were never ready. Like, oh, I'm not ready enough to compete, blah, blah. And he basically was like, it's kind of a cope, and you can be one of 2 people. You can be someone who retires from the sport you never competed in, and you talk to people and you're like, "Well, if I'd only competed, I would have crushed it." Or you can be someone who just goes out and competes, you know, and you place whatever you place. But you'll never know, unless you can actually go try it. Even if you're listening and you're like, "Oh, I don't wanna do this half marathon or this 5K or this 10K or whatever because, like, I'm just not ready enough," like, I say just sign up for shit and just do your best, unless you think like, first of all, if you're having that thought anyway, you're not a professional athlete, so you don't need to be worrying about it, and if it's your first time getting into a sport, you're probably not elite anyway, so just, like, have fun and see if you even like competing, like, I don't know, like, Day and I could do this and be like, "This shit's fucking lame, dude." Or we could get out there and be like, "Yo, when are we doing our next one?" Like, we neither of us have any idea how the outcome of this is going to dictate how we feel about it in the future. So, I'm not tripping about it. I'm just gonna drink,
Yeah.
a bunch of caffeine and eat a bunch of Nerds clusters, and we're gonna rip it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's something too with like all competitions and races. Like it's so easy to get nervous about it. I know I do. I have like crazy performance anxiety knowing that there's nothing on the line here. I'm not a professional athlete. I'm doing everything I do is for fun.
Yeah.
And I've gotten better with that because I know when I was younger, I always wanted to like I always wanted to win when I would do CrossFit competitions. I wanted to win when I would do like, you know, all of these things. I want you to go in wanting to win. But now it's kind of like, hey, I'm doing this. Like my main goal is to be healthy and to be fit and have fun with it. Like thoroughly enjoy my training. And this is just me expressing the fitness that I've accumulated through my training,
Mhm.
but I haven't been strategically training for this like a professional athlete would. Like, I'm not optimizing everything in my life for performance for this high rocks, right? So
Mhm.
keeping that in mind too, and it's just more fun when you do it with friends.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, like we're you you signed me up for a competition in November with we are talking about doing
Oh,
too, so
yeah.
that'll be sick.
That'll be fun. That'll be fun.
We'll wait to announce that on here because that'll we'll, we'll chill out a little bit.
Yeah, yeah, we'll give it a
It's a
break. But I
24-hour
signed
race.
several people up for that, and everyone I've signed up for has agreed to it.
But dude,
Yeah.
I will say, we're all fortunate. I think most of us don't have kids too.
Yeah.
So, we're just a bunch of dumb millennials with no kids
Yep.
just doing fitness competitions.
Exactly. Like, what else are you gonna do?
Dude, I don't know. Work more? I don't want to do
Yeah.
that. I already do enough of that. I'm trying to have some fun.
Exactly.
But yeah, that's my training. Kind of sucked. Kind of bummed about it, but whatever. That's it. Oh, I'm doing a VO2 test on Wednesday.
Okay, so you're gonna do that.
Yeah. So I tried that with Carmen. Machine was unfortunately on the fritz, which, shit happens. So I'm going to do that on Wednesday. Maybe that'll be one of my higher intensity runs. I don't think so. It's only like 15 to 20 minutes, right?
Yeah, it goes by pretty quick, but it is if you're going to true exhaustion, like you'll definitely be tired. But I think you'll
Yeah.
be fine. You're doing it on the treadmill?
Yeah.
That'd be cool.
I'm stoked on it. I think it's going to be fun.
Yeah.
Because so, okay, maybe you can answer this quickly. I was thinking about this when you were presenting yesterday that you've got your max when the line flattens out and then they're like, I'm done, I'm toast. Can you tell by the VO2 and CO2 whatever on the chart when they're toast, when it's over? Like, if someone keeps going, do those numbers, that line ever drop and they just keep going, or they normally just cash out?
When you're looking at the VO2 graph, the
Yeah.
VO2 across time,
Mhm.
you can usually tell because like it's plateauing, right?
Mhm.
Like
Okay, gotcha.
you'll reach that plateau and you're like, okay, they're reaching their max here. But you could also tell too because like on the machine, there's a computer screen that the person who's administering the test sees.
Mhm.
And there, you get heart rate and everything. So if you look at all the variables and you put two and two together, you can assume like, okay, this person's entering that realm of like max exertion because like
Yeah.
that VO2 is plateauing and their heart rate is steadily at 200 and then you just look at them and they physically look like they're dying and usually it's
Mhm.
like okay, we're
Oh,
we're
yeah.
getting to that point.
Yeah. I don't know why stuff like that excites me. Like, I'm super excited to see how far I can push myself. You know
Yeah.
those moments where your heart rate's like 103, like
Yeah.
200, and you're like, okay, you're panicking essentially, and you're like, let me off this ride, let me off this ride, and then something else, your brain kicks in, and you're like, no, fucking keep going. You can
Yeah.
keep going, and then it's like every 10 seconds, it's like a renegotiation, renegotiation, renegotiation. Those are fun. Yeah, I'm stoked. I think it's gonna be fun. I wanna see how
Right,
far I
you're
can
just
push it.
like negotiating with yourself like, "Okay, until when I see the next minute, at the top of the
Mhm.
next minute, I'll tell no, no, I got 30 more seconds, 30 more seconds. Alright, next 15 seconds, next 15. Oh, wait, no, you know what? We'll wait till the next minute."
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah,
1 more minute, and then you see the minute pass and you don't stop and you're like, "Fuck, 1 more minute. Okay, another minute, another minute, another
yeah.
minute." So,
I've heard this several times, and I'm someone who does this, where I, like, negotiate with myself during some of my, like, fun runs, like not fun runs, but, like, non-prescribed runs where I'm just going based on feel, and I'll be like, "You know what? I'll go 5 miles. When I reach the 5-mile mark, I'll call it. I reached the 5 mile. What's another mile? Just keep going."
mhm,
You know what? At this point, we're almost at an hour. Might as well just go for the full hour. Okay.
mhm.
And then you reach the full hour. You know what? Let me go. And then you just keep negotiating. Eventually, I reach the point where I'm like, all right, this is kind of absurd. And at this point, I'm doing more damage than good. Like, this was supposed to be
Yeah.
super easy and blah, blah, blah. But there's a lot of negotiating.
Yeah. I think it's fun. I don't know, man. I think there's something about doing physically difficult things with your body that kinda, like, it's healthy for your brain. I think we talked about this with Marley, the, like, anterior mid-cingulate cortex thing
Yeah. Yeah.
of, like, doing shit you don't wanna do is good for your brain, and I think that you kinda can get addicted to putting yourself in situations that suck, you know? Because I think the takeaway from the Huberman podcast was you like I said to you guys, you can't do something you like, that doesn't count. You know, if you like going for the run, it doesn't matter. But if you like you were talking about you don't like doing really intense shit. Your reasons are different, but you know, if you could get in those moments where like you push past that and you like do it, that those are those moments. So like you like running, but there's pieces of running you don't like. So you still have access to pieces of running that
Yeah.
could help push that part of your brain to, adapt. It's just shit you don't want to do.
Yeah.
It's shit
Exactly.
you do not want to do.
For sure. And
And that's fun.
I'm really good at not doing the things I don't like. So I did it all the time CrossFit. Like I liked handstand push-ups. I liked obviously pull-ups. I liked pistol squats,
Mhm.
you know. So I overdid those movements. Like I was
Mhm.
so good. I could like probably compete with anyone when it came to handstand push-ups. Like I
Whoa.
accumulated so much volume in that. You asked me to do bar muscle ups. I hated that. I hated doing like burpees. I hated burpees. Everyone hates burpees, but like,
Mhm.
I would die out during those things. So like it was clear what can you hear Ozzy snoring?
Mm-mm.
Okay, good. But it was clear what I liked and what I didn't like. And I also liked the type of workouts that I was like, oh hey, it's a 60-minute EMOM. Sweet. But like those 5-minute AMRAPs,
Yeah.
no, no,
No.
yeah,
Yeah, that's funny. I mean, I think that's like kind of our nature, right? Is to like do the things we like to do and
yeah,
get rid of the shit we don't.
yeah.
But who knows? Who knows? All right, we're gonna go over. We're gonna transition now, and we're gonna go. We got three topics we're gonna talk about. That are some myths and common things talked about, I think, in fitness, and just kind of get our uneducated, educated takes on them. Our unhinged takes, or normal takes, probably, honestly, that people don't think are normal. So we're gonna do strength training is easy. Period. I think we both kind of agree with that. Obviously, if you're getting into like, again, I hate that I have to reiterate this because most people that I think would throw a fit online are not people who are elite. But strength training is easy until you're an elite strength athlete, then that shit kind of sucks, you know? But that's true for anything, if you want to be an elite athlete, it's awful, I think, like it's tough. You have to like it's your job. It's all you do. So strength training is easy for everybody. The second one would be not getting bulky. To anyone who's listening to this who's ever had the feeling of like, shit, I don't want to go to the gym because I'm gonna get bulky. I don't want to lift heavy because I'm gonna get bulky. You're not. We'll talk about that. And then the last one is tech metrics ruining your brain. So are all the wearables we have, all the data we have, and how some people can you really benefit from seeing those numbers and kind of having an idea as like a general, charting of where their recovery is, where their workload has been, et cetera, et cetera. Some people can benefit from that if they have the personality type for it, but some people have some obsessive behavior types and can really put them in an anxious hole with that stuff. And I'm sure Day can talk about that because Day is our data person. She is data. Data, Lainey.
Yes, I put the day
That's what
the
her
data.
her degree on her wall says. It says Day Munoz, data lady.
Yeah.
I heart data. Okay, Day, you want to kick it off with strength training is easy?
Yeah. I think we've gone on this rant several times about it where if you're comparing strength training and endurance training, strength training is, I would say, and I think a lot of people would agree, very easy relative to endurance training. And until you get to those parts where if you're an elite level powerlifter, an elite level Olympic lifter, like that's where things get hard with that because you're looking at such minute details and you're going to such an extreme. But for the general population where you are just going to the gym, you're doing, you know, machines, free weights, barbell work, whatever, it's pretty easy to go in there 45 minutes. Some people go for an hour and a half if they're going for a more volume-based approach, like bodybuilders, full body splits, all that. It's still not a hard thing, and I say it's not a hard thing, even if you're doing drop sets, if you're going AMRAPs and all that, because it just doesn't last a long time. Yes, there are some sets that suck and some movements that suck. Nobody wants to do an AMRAP of Bulgarian split squats at a heavy weight and, like, an AMRAP of that on each leg. Like, your heart rate's gonna shoot up, you feel like your legs are gonna collapse, it's not the most fun thing to do, but if you're comparing that relative to doing, let's say, sprints or, a high like, interval training or anything like that, I would say it's easier than that just because of the fact that it's it doesn't last long. It's gonna be over within, a minute or so or whatever, however many reps you do. I know would you even say that's a controversial take?
Uh, I think it's controversial only because cardio is kind of viewed as this thing that is, like, not that important, and I think what happens sometimes, honestly, is that, like, running sucks. Like, doing steady state cardio, like you were talking about in our VO2 training stuff we did yesterday, it just kinda sucks, like, it's boring as shit, and I think that the fact that it is like, the way you have to do it is one modality for, you know, a long amount of time, just the whole way through. I think people kind of make an excuse that running like, cardio itself is not that important, compared to strength training. I think that's a message that's gotten kinda blown up on the internet. Like, I think the way we interact with the fitness world we get the best of both worlds. Like, I see a lot of really, really good strength athletes and a lot of really good endurance athletes, and then the middle ground of, like, the Alec Blennises and the what's his name? Alex, I can't remember his
Fiata?
name. Yeah, Fiata, the guy who is the original hybrid athlete. So we get exposed to that, but I think for a lot of people, like, even in my family, that do and people I know, they just do a lot of, like, bodybuilding stuff, and when I bring up cardio, they're like, "I don't need that shit," and it's like sometimes I think it's a cope because it's really hard, honestly, and people don't wanna admit that it's hard for them to get on a rower, a bike, a Stairmaster, whatever, for 60 straight minutes twice a week, or however they wanna do it and do it, you know? And I think people choose strength training because doing a 5 by 5, a bench press at 85% is just not fucking hard.
And it's
I
fun.
can't be convinced. It's fun.
It's
It's
fun.
fun.
Like, you feel
Mhm.
like a badass when you're able
Yeah,
to
you're like, "What's
squat,
up,
deadlift,
dude?
bench. Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
sick."
When you have, like, a crazy pump, like, I think one of the most fun times I've had in my training is training with friends and also going to bodybuilding gyms and doing
Mhm,
machine-based training and doing true bodybuilding style training, like, that is the most enjoyable style of training, I think, and I think it's a great gateway for a lot of people. They end up going down the route of, like, bodybuilding, and then they're like, "Okay, let me start integrating other things." I think there is a path. There's, like, a common thing I've seen where it's like people transition from one modality to another to another. So, like, some people start with CrossFit, then they go powerlifting, then they go bodybuilding. My
mhm.
path was bodybuilding, powerlifting, CrossFit, and now, like, endurance, the hybrid-ish style. Like, people jump around, and I think that's a good thing because then
Mhm.
you see what was the hardest, what was the easiest for you. And I'm not
Yeah.
saying like, I say strength training, lifting weights is easier than running, and I truly do believe that, but I also think that's very specific to me, and someone else maybe will maybe there is a large group of people who would disagree with me on that. I don't know. And then there's also other variables that you have to consider, like the duration of the run, the intensity of the run. Because yeah, if we're talking about cardio and they're saying just incline walking, well, it's like, well, yeah, an incline walk isn't going to be comparable to those AMRAP Bulgarian split squats, right?
Mhm,
So there's that too. So you kind of have to match up intensity. But if I'm looking at it as a whole, I would say strength training is a lot easier. But I also think it's a lot funner,
mhm.
I would
Yeah.
say.
Yeah, there's definitely a barrier for some people where it's like an enjoyment thing, where they don't enjoy strength training or they're scared of it because they had a doctor one time tell them, you know, if they
Yeah.
squat with a bar on their back, their discs are going to explode. So I do think that's kind of going away. And I think the thing I want to encourage from like a positive standpoint is exactly what you said of like, try all the modalities. So the truth is like, there are adaptations. Like, I guess if you're listening to this podcast, you're probably familiar with that term, but adaptation is like you lift weights, your muscles get stronger and bigger. You run or bike, your cardiovascular system and your cardiovascular system improves. There are improvements from cardiovascular training and strength slash muscle growth training that are non-overlapping. Like you're not going to get some of the benefits of cardio from lifting. You're not going to get some of the benefits of lifting from cardio. And I want to encourage people to just like do both of them. You know, you don't have to, if you're like a regular old gym goer and your cardiovascular system sucks, I think this also applies to elite level powerlifters and you see them a lot more doing like incline walks all the time, a lot of steps. Like these strong men talk all the time about, and we're talking like the most elite strong men and women do a lot of cardio. You have to have a cardiovascular system that can support the amount of workload you're trying to do. And I think especially for like newcomers, I mean, you know what it feels like when you're out of shape and you try to hit the gym. You know, like sometimes if it's like a 4 minute, you're like out of breath, you're shaky. You know, your body just can't keep up with the demand. So I would just encourage people to try like do both of them. I just think strength training is the easiest barrier if you don't like cardio. Obviously, people are gonna go strength training. And then if you're kind of like a little baby about it, you're like, I don't want to run, it's hard. So I guess it's not that controversial, but I want people to do both. Do both.
Yeah.
You know, it's not gonna ruin your gains if you do running. You're like you're not you're not running that much.
Yeah.
You know, it's just not gonna happen. Um, so maybe not that controversial, but still, I do think people will cope about cardio all the time. I did. I did for years. I coped. I was like, nah, I don't need that shit. It's lame. But the second I started, I could feel my cardio getting better. My lifts felt so much better. It was crazy.
Yeah.
So much better. So, okay, the next topic. I'll start this one. Not getting bulky. I think so. I run a Gen Pop gym with 300 or so members, and I would say 60 or 70% of the time, 60% of the 70% of interesting conversations I have are about this topic of like, I don't want to get bulky. And I think just like, you know, you've probably heard things like, I'm sure you have, like, I just want to be like long and lean. I want to tone my muscles. And there's a lot of people I think I've seen online talk about how to have this conversation with clients and whether or not to have this conversation with clients. And some people take the side of like, oh, just ignore it. It doesn't matter. They'll just do what you say. They don't really know what that means anyway. You know, it's kind of like this weird, vague sentence that doesn't really mean anything, you know? And they kind of just like pass it by. And there's the other camp that's like, I think it's important to educate your clients, which I agree with to some extent. But, you know, if someone walks in and says that to me, and the first thing I do is like try to educate them out of 20 years of, 30 years of, you know, conditional societal programming, it's probably not going to work very well. So the thing I'll say about this is like, unless you've got some genetic thing where you put on way too much, like a bunch of muscles. Some people do. In all due respect, if you are like a 45, 40 plus year old woman who's never been to the gym, 50, 60, the chances of you getting bulky are astronomical. It's not going to happen. And I think in a world where like, I think, you know, women have been made to feel small and not take up space and whatever, you know, the osteopenia, bone loss, and sarcopenia, muscle loss, and hormone changes, blood glucose levels, blood pressure, like adding as much muscle as humanly possible is so important. And the thing I say to people, which gets them, is I've got a few clients who are like mid to late 60s, early 70s, who are jacked, a bunch of muscle, super strong. They feel like they look great self-reportedly. From the outside perspective, knowing the numbers, they're super strong, and you know, you can see definition on all their muscles. I've never heard one of them complain about being too strong. Not once. I've never heard a 7-year-old be like, damn, I just wish I didn't have so much muscle. You know what I'm saying? So the goal in life is to get as strong and muscly as possible. Obviously, you're not gonna get crazy big unless you're taking steroids, but then you're doing it on purpose anyway, so besides the point. Like, I just wish people would want to put on as much muscle as they can so that when they get into the later stages of their life, they actually have some muscle to rely on and can just keep it going until they're, 70, 80, whatever. So, you're not gonna get bulky. It's just not gonna happen. Like, Day and I have both actively tried to get bulky, and it is not like you have to eat like a pig, you have to be on top of your nutrition, your work ethic has to be great, your proximity to failure has to be huge, like, like, really have to try. For some people, obviously, it just happens, but for most of us, it does not. So that's my rant. Day,
Yeah.
make me stop talking.
I know. I mean, I think you said everything perfectly. I know everyone says about the non-bulky thing and all that. And so, like, I always think about the time when I was doing bodybuilding a few years ago, and I was, my nutrition was on point. I only ate food that I prepped and I tracked everything. So I knew my exact caloric intake, how much protein I was getting. I was tracking my sodium intake, like all of it, right? So like I was on point with that. And my goal was to gain as much muscle as possible, especially in the off season before my shows. As a natural athlete, right? As someone who was not taking any performance enhancing drugs or anything like that. So that was my goal. I had at that time I was living on my own in New York City. My job was pretty easy. So I was getting enough sleep. That wasn't an issue, right? Stress was pretty low because I was getting paid pretty good too. So no like life stressors or anything like that. I wasn't in school, so it was great. And during that time where it seemed like everything was optimized and I was training plenty, all very bodybuilding style training. So if I was doing any cardio, it was very easy stairmaster or incline walking. Nothing um, that caused too much of that interference effect we always hear about, right? Because my goal was to maximize the amount of muscle I was putting on. And during that time, I weighed about 20 pounds heavier than what I am now. So 20 pounds heavier, and and if you looked at a picture of me now versus then and now, you wouldn't really say much of a difference. You would see some more muscle on me, but I wouldn't say that most people would be like, "Oh, she was bulky." I was still very small, and that was with concentrated effort of lifting as someone who is shorter and puts on a lot of muscle quickly. And so with that, and that was years of doing that, right? So with that, it's, like, hard for me to justify and say, "Hey, you're gonna get bulky," because, like, right now, as someone who's still lifting hard 3 to 4 times a week and now incorporating more running than what I did at that time, and still I'm still pretty good at getting my protein intake. I'm not as consistent with that as I was before, and my nutrition varies, and with that, like, I have less muscle, but I don't think anyone looks at me and they're like, "Oh, Dave's bulky." I would never think that anyone would think that. I wish they would,
Yeah,
honestly.
I was about to say,
Yeah.
like, the greatest compliment.
Yeah, that would be a huge compliment. So, I think there's a distorted perception of that, of women who do strength training are bulky. But then, you look at, media, not just social media, but media like magazines and all that, and what they portray as, like, the desirable way of women to look and
Mhm.
then you're like, "Okay, I could see why even just a bit of muscle, some women would call that bulky because they just have this distorted view,
Yeah.
and it's just the way it is, and it's kinda like trying to have them open their mind a little bit to be like, "Hey, no, like, having muscle is good, like, this is what you want." And
Mhm.
some people kinda come around to it when they're exposed to it, and they're like, "Oh, this is actually badass, like, this is
Yeah.
cool." And especially if you worked to have some bicep or some quad definition and all that, and then that's when people start taking pride in it. 'Cause, that was one thing I remember a previous relationship I was in, the guy was always like, "Oh, like, I don't wanna date a bulky girl, like, too muscular, like, this bodybuilding chick is too muscular, blah, blah, blah." But then when they were introduced to it more and more often, they would go to bodybuilding shows. It was like there was an appreciation for it. And so
Mhm.
then next thing you know, they didn't find it gross anymore, they found it appealing.
Mhm.
And it was just like just through exposure and seeing like what it takes to have even just a little bit of muscle, it's like, okay,
Yeah.
actually I changed my mind. That's not gross. That's fucking awesome.
Mhm.
And so that's cool too.
Yeah, I wish we could get more people on board with that.
Yeah.
I really do.
Yeah.
I think my controversial take on it might be that when I see people online who advocate for in that assessment moment being like, just you have to educate them. I do feel like that as either someone whose social skills are not maybe the highest, or they actually have not had that interaction with someone. Because, you know, I've been coaching in a building with people for 4 years now with, I mean, a constant, all day long interactions and trying to convince someone of something that they've believed for 35 years. You're
Mhm.
not doing that in one conversation.
Yeah.
Like that's an onion you have to peel back weeks and weeks, and sometimes that onion closes off, and it's like, "No, no, no, this is what I think," and you're like, "Okay, that's fine." Now then, you as the coach have to figure out a way to get them the results they want, and that's like a whole different thing, but anytime I see someone that's like, "If you're a coach, you just need to tell them," like, blah, it's like, "Shut the fuck up." You know what you're talking about. Like, you've never
Yeah.
actually had interactions with people like this um, who are older, or you're talking to really young people who are still super malleable, in which case, sure. But again, you know, you don't catch, you want to catch the bees with honey, not vinegar. So you're trying to like expose them, just like you said, like expose them to the positives of it, expose them to the things you want them to see, expose them to maybe, some of the programming that they didn't know that they've been given over their life. And it takes time, it takes time and also, I think it's kind of a gross idea to be like, "I'm going into this to change I wanna change people's minds." Sometimes I think, like, if you talk to good educators, they're not there to change anyone's mind. I'm there to present information,
Mhm.
like, I don't want to tell people what they should or shouldn't think. I don't want to tell people like, even with the strength training is easy, like, I don't wanna tell people they have to run or they have to lift. I want people to just like try to realize that there are things from lifting and things from conditioning that are beneficial for them. And this notion of if I do conditioning, my strength is going to get destroyed. It's not. Just try it. And I think the benefits you'll gain from cardiovascular health will benefit you in a way that you didn't notice. When people I know are like, "Oh, I don't do that shit," I'm like, "All right, that's fine." And then maybe later on they'll ask me like, "Hey, what do you think about all that running shit?" And then I can be like, "Oh, like in my experience, how it affected me, da 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 da. Here's what happened." Yeah. Anytime I hear someone be like, "Oh yeah, just tell," it's like, okay,
I know.
that's like telling someone to
Especially
calm down.
exactly. And I'm someone where like if someone were like if I tell you what I believe or whatever and you're trying to tell me the opposite, I'll be like, "Fuck off. I'm not listening to you." It just doesn't work for a lot of people. Maybe some people are convinced very easily on the spot or they're more receptive to it. I know I'm not, and I don't think most people are either,
Mm-mm.
especially if it's a like you're saying, something they've believed for 30 plus years. Like that's a hard thing to change someone's mind. And,
Fuck
a lot
yeah.
of it has to do with factors beyond our control. And it's been what they've been exposed to and it's
Mhm.
ingrained. It's kind of like what we are taught growing up of what's good and bad. And it's hard to change, make me believe
Mhm.
you know, and try to convince me something's good when I've been thinking it's been bad my whole life.
Yeah. Yeah, dude. My favorite is to say like, I've had conversations with people about the knees over toes stuff.
Yeah.
Like, I'll have them squat in the gym or do an assessment or whatever, and I'll see them do a squat pattern that I want to change. You know, or see if I can work it into a better position and more traditional looking squat. And I'll have them push their knees forward, whatever, just to see like tolerance levels, et cetera, et cetera. And they'll say it to me, and most of like, "Oh, I thought I was supposed to squat with my knees over my toes." And I'll immediately be like, there's a lot of people out there in white coats and glasses who are a lot smarter than me, who over the last like 20 years, I think have put some interesting research out about how that's no longer the case anymore. So like I will immediately switch over to like a little bit of a education bias of like, I'm not the one saying this. The people with the lab coats and the glasses are saying this. Like the professionals who spend their whole careers figuring out if the thing you think is true or not. they don't agree with you. And that's not to discount my own education, but, I think sometimes we say things to people and we're like, "This is my opinion." And it's like, "No, it's actually not my opinion. I'm choosing to trust the entire, sports medicine community as a whole. I didn't come up with this shit." Like, do I look smart enough to you to fucking go do these tests? No, bro. What are you talking about? The people who spend their whole career doing this have decided that what I'm saying is the most accurate and it's what they're saying. Not what I'm saying. I didn't make it up. They made it up. So that does work. And most of the time I'll say like, there's a lot of really good information out about having your knees over your toes is not a bad thing. I'd be happy to share that with you. And if you don't feel comfortable doing it, we don't have to do it. And normally right there, people are like, "Okay, I'll give it a shot." I'm like, "All right, perfect." You know, you can't
Yeah.
be a dick about it.
Yeah.
I should just be like, "Fucking change your mind, idiot. You're wrong, dumbass. Did you
It's
ever
the
think about
way.
you're fucking wrong, stupid?" That's
Yeah,
what I should
that's the
do.
way to convince people. That's what they need.
Are you anxious? Just don't be anxious. What is your
Yeah,
problem?
like, why are you anxious?
Grow up. You ever tried growing up?
Yeah.
Okay, the last one, Day, you can kick this off. Day the data lady. Tech metrics and what you think about them, how they affect, mental health and performance outcomes, etc. I want to hear your thoughts on it.
Yeah, I think it's not just in normal life where we've been exposed a lot to, like, technologies for our health, like wearables, like, right now I have the Whoop on my wrist, or rings or any of that stuff. It goes into, like, sport performance too, like, at the professional and college level, you'll see a ton of technology now in the gyms to measure every little thing of force out and how fast a barbell is moving and how many jumps an athlete is doing in a practice session. So all of these things are being measured now. And it's great because it gives us so much insight, but it can be dangerous where it interferes a lot with just, your training and your kind of like your approach to training too. And I'll take it from from the perspective of just someone who's wearing a wearable like a watch or a Whoop watch or your iPhone, your Apple Watch, Garmin's, all that stuff. And it gives you all of this data. You wake up, it's maybe one of the first things you look at. I know for me, like I wake up, the first things I do is I do my daily Wordle and then I open up my Whoop app and then I look at, okay, what's the detected sleep duration to see how much sleep I have, my resting heart rate, my HRV, and my recovery score. And it's just like, I just like looking at it and it's now part of my routine. Wake up and look at it. And sometimes it kind of messes with my head where let's say I'm in the yellow or red, my recovery score is low. I'm like, oh crap. Like I had a hard session today, like planned, like, maybe I don't feel good, but and sometimes I do feel good and the session
Hmm.
is just fine. So I kind of have to get out of my own head and be like, all right, like just ignore that right now. You never know. It's technology. There's always things that go wrong with it. So people go through this battle of how much they should trust the data and all that. I've gotten to the point where I look at it to see trends, and I like to see, especially the sleep duration, like, am I sleeping enough? What's my trend? And I also like to look at my resting heart rate and my HRV. And so I like to see trends with that. And sometimes I make training decisions based off of it, but I don't live by it. And I don't look at acute scores throughout the day. So I don't wake up, see a tanked HRV and a super elevated resting heart rate and think, okay, I'm going to change my training. I will change my training if I see that for 3, 4 days consecutively. And I'm like, okay, I'm seeing this trend now. And if my subjective measurements, like how I feel, are matching up with that, then that's where I'm like, okay, but let's say my subjective measurements are not matching up with that, and I actually feel great and I am moving well and mentally I'm good, emotionally and physically, then I'm going to listen to that more than what I'm going to listen to my watch. And it's this fine line, like you were saying before, where some people are very obsessive with it and will kind of become, neurotic with their approach. And you have to be careful with that. So I always say, like, wearables is super useful. You get so much insight. Technology is so useful. You get so much insight, but it also depends who it is
Hmm.
and how you're using it. So I always am careful with who I'm using it with and how we approach that data. And it's the same thing like working with teams where there is so much technology now in the weight room. We have force plates, we have velocity based trainers, we have GPS systems and sensors that measure every single distance and jump and change a direction that you have in practice. And it's like,
Their fart speed.
yeah, seriously, like everything. How many times they blinked and all that stuff. And it's just like, okay, this is great because I get to see a full picture of what's going on and how much external load they're taking on.
Mhm.
But it's also dangerous because we're interfering with like plans and, programming approaches that we know are sound and work. Like
Mhm.
all this technology didn't exist 20 years ago, 10 years ago, and we were still producing crazy athletes,
Mhm.
breaking records. And so this technology is now introduced and we can use it to our benefit to maybe even kind of keep pushing the barriers and pushing the line, but we also have to be careful with how much we're integrating it with and our approach with it. So it's kind of like this fine line and this balance where, like, I do love technology and I love data and I use it, but I'm also very careful with how I use it and who I'm using it with. It's just crazy.
Yeah.
You got
Yeah, I mean,
information about everything.
yeah, I totally agree. I think with technology, it just moves really quick, and I think it gives us all these tools, but then, the question always is like, do I need this? Is this tool valuable to me? Like, I think for a while there was a lot of sports coaches that would use, force plate data to dictate some of these like readiness scores, as well as like their whoop stuff. And then you realize that, kids can cheat on the force plate data. And, using objective measurements like that, I think you're right about like if it doesn't line up with the subjective measurement of the person, you know, I think sometimes it seems like in the sports world, for some people, it's too many variables.
Mhm.
When you're looking at science and shit and tests and experiments, you're not working with like 70 variables at once, right?
For experiments, let's like research.
Yeah,
Depending on how good your statistical team is and
you
doing the
are.
statistical analysis, sometimes there is a lot,
Yeah,
but
that
a
you have to
lot of
count
research.
for.
Yes, but a lot of research settings don't have that robustness of working with that many
Mhm,
variables, so there are a lot of assumptions being made as well, so it goes hand in hand, right? Like, especially for a lot of strength and conditioning research, they're not accounting for a lot of variables
mhm,
because it's a lot. Like, you're asking let's say you have 10 subjects and you're seeing if this version of a squat produces more hypertrophy, we know that there's a lot more than just that squat variation in the sets and reps. There's the nutrition, the sleep, the
mhm,
mental stress, the blah, 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 all this stuff. And it's some research does account for a lot of it, some research does not. And that's what makes it a good or bad research, but requires a
mhm.
lot more statistics and all that. And so, yeah.
Yeah, well, and I think we've now given all this data to a group of people who make these decisions without a very strong team to statistically analyze all this and whether it's actually helpful or harmful or useful or whatever, and then we just like make a bunch of decisions, and that just seems like it muddies the water for the sports coach who's like, you know, they have 4 kids whose HRV was, 6% lower for 2 days, and their force plate day, and then they're like someone's like, "Alright, rewrite the plan." Or, a student comes in, they're like, "My HRV's down, so I need a new plan for today." And it's like, "No. Just go go work out. Just go work out. You're fine." Like, "Do you feel okay?" And I don't know. I think sometimes when you have products like that, the people who read all this data to you are giving you this data with the implication that it's important. You don't get this data and then they're like, it doesn't really matter. When they sell it to you, they're like, oh no, it really matters for it really, whatever. And it's like, okay, does it though? Because I've also woken up, I check my sleep scores and they're dog shit, and then I get to the workout and I feel great, I'm
Great.
like, "We're
Yeah.
gonna rip it." And you rip it, and there's days where I have a 99 sleep score, I feel great, I'm recovered, I go work out, and you feel like dog shit. And again, it can be helpful, and there's people who do it right, I'm not saying there's not, but I do think and for the general population, I think there are people it just makes them more fragile. like really, really fragile where they're like, well, I went out on Friday and I had a bad sleep score, and then Saturday my sleep was affected, and now I just need to do a really easy workout today. And it's like, no,
You work
why?
out 2 to 3 times a week, you don't need an easy
Yeah,
one,
you're
like
fine. You're
yeah,
fine. You're so fine. Like, I don't know. It's just like it gives you this fragile mentality of like it makes a decision for them rather than maybe, I don't know, helping them. It's like a non-educated decision. They just see something that scares them and
mhm,
it's like just not helpful. All it does is bring anxiety. And you could ask them like, "What did you do before this watch?" And it's like, "I just worked out."
yeah, do that.
Okay, maybe we just do that. Like maybe we don't obsess about all these numbers and your HRV and your heart rate. Like the reason those things change are so complicated and we don't get the whole answer, we just get the metric on that back end that's like, "This was what your thing was." And then you could ask them like, "Hey, do you have any idea what any of this like, the implications of this is?" And they'd be like, "Not really, I just heard that if these are low, I'm fucked up." And you're like, "Maybe,
Yeah.
maybe, maybe." And the people who do it, I feel like don't even know that well, you know? So, I don't know, sometimes too much access fucks people up and puts them in this weird corner of, like, fear. They're like, "Oh, my sleep score was 68."
Yeah, and I think in let's say, like, in the college setting, working with athletes, I try not to adjust workouts until, like, we're getting approaching, like, competition, and that's where,
Mhm,
like, I'll approach things 'cause it's like, okay, there's a competition that we're approaching, we have to be peaked for that, but a lot of times I'm
mhm,
not using the technology for it to make those adjustments. I'll make adjustments if someone comes up to me and they're like, "Hey, I had a huge exam, I didn't sleep at all last night, and I'm super stressed." And I know basically like, all right, if that's the case and you're already mentally like fatigued,
mhm.
you kind of have this you're already setting yourself up to not go as
Yeah.
hard. So there's that. Also, you're like there is an increased risk of injury. Let's say we did have heavy
Mhm,
back squats and all of this compounded fatigue. Maybe it'll be good for you to calm down. And then
mhm,
there's other times where it's like, I know someone had a big competition or a long race or something like that. Like, "Oh, hey, yeah, I just ran a full marathon on Sunday." So, sometimes people do things without, having that plan. They're like, "Oh, yeah, I just like impromptu, did 20-mile run or a full marathon." So it's like, "Okay, since you did that, you kind of like really, really worked your body out. So let's we're gonna have to adjust this a bit. So
mhm.
I'm not gonna have the prescribed training I had for you originally. So there's that. But yeah, it's mostly subjective based, right? And
Mhm.
then objective, I'm really looking like I said before, trends and all that, but I try not to rely on it too much. The
Yeah.
only time I rely on like data is if I'm using like external workload data. So if I like a Garmin watch that's telling me an athlete ran 5 more miles than or 30% more than what they normally run in a
Mhm.
week. So I'm like, okay, there's some compounded fatigue. Maybe I can adjust if the subjective measurement aligns with it. Same thing with
Yeah.
like GPS or IMU system, inertial measurement system, which measures distance and jump load and all these different things. It's like, okay, if that's matching up with their subjective, then we'll go with it.
Mhm.
'Cause that makes sense, but there may be some mechanical stress on the bo
Yeah, I agree that, and I think to round out what I was saying is it maybe sounds like I don't like the wearables. I do. I think you need to not when you see the wearable numbers, this objective data, you have to not let it creep into your subjective feeling. Like, you have to be able to separate those 2. Because, like, I'm sure Dave's done it. I've shown up to the gym with terrible objective data, and if I'm gonna self-regulate, which I think everyone should, auto-regulation's the best, that doesn't mean you look at the data and then immediately auto-regulate down without trying. You go and do the workout and see how it feels, and then if you feel like shit and your Whoop, if those 2 line up, then yeah, auto-regulate down. But don't just let this watch dictate your life. You gotta like look inside and be like, how do I feel? My body, does my body feel good? Do I feel like sharp and spry and with it, or do I kind of feel toasted? So that's what I would say.
Yeah, there was something I was gonna say, and then Ozzy distracted me just now because he wanted to get off my lap. Yeah, with technology, like, I think people forget that these technologies are not 100% accurate or
Mhm.
reliable, and there's some validity issues too. And I've mentioned it a few times where it's like they also have this black box algorithm where we don't know how they're calculating these scores. Let's say resting heart rate is the more important metric to you, or sleep duration, it may not be weighed as much in the recovery score for one of the wearables like, Whoop that has a HRV. They weigh HRV very heavily.
Mhm.
So, let's say your sleep and your resting heart rate are trending pretty good, or they're not fluctuating as much, but your recovery score is gonna show pretty bad poorly. It's because it's HRV based, and it may not be indicative of what you're actually feeling. So
Mhm.
keeping that in mind too, like, these things aren't perfect, and, like, the person who like, the thing that knows the most about how you're feeling is you. So listen to that first and foremost.
Yeah, and always wanna encourage people to, like, figure out what it feels like to listen to what your body's saying. It's got some pretty good signals and, like, you get more attuned with it the more you listen and try. Try to do stuff and then, you know, just play it by ear and not just let all the outside information tell you. Because you get better at listening. And that's with, like, injury stuff too, like, you get better, like, you lift over press something overhead, you're like, "Hmm, that felt weird on my shoulder."
Mhm.
You can quickly, like, once you've done it enough, like, "Ah, it'll be good." And I don't know how I know, but there's times where I'm doing something and I feel it, and you're like, "Hmm, I'm gonna try that one more time." And you do it, and you're like, that's not happening."
Yeah.
You know? You just get used to it. And it's not something to be scared of, your body does weird shit. It hurts for 2 days and it's gone, and you're like someone's like, "What was it?" And you're like, "Oh, it's gone, don't care
Yeah.
anymore."
Yeah.
Is what it is.
Exactly.
Alright, Dave, what else you got?
I think those were all the topics we had, right?
Is it? That's what we
Yeah.
got. Should we do our
Sweet.
outro?
Let's do it.
Our outro? Okay, everybody, thank you for watching. Send this to your friends. Send this to someone you think likes fitness and would listen to this if you get to this spot. We like doing this. We haven't had questions in a while. Whatever, you guys are haters, it's okay. And we'll keep coming up with shit and just keep talking. That's Unscripted Strength, episode 21, I think. Hopefully, we'll have
So 21.
a few more people on the podcast here soon. So it'll be fun. That's all,
Yeah.
folks.
Cool.
Later.
See you soon.
Deuces.